In this unit, you are going to learn how to express obligation and absence of obligation, permission and prohibition using must, have to, have got to, let, allow, permit, need and need to, and how to use should and ought to for suggestions, instructions, duty and advice. The principal structures used to say that it is necessary or obligatory to do something are must, to have got to need to. We'll look at the difference in meaning between one structure and another shortly. First, let's look at each structure. Must is a modal auxiliary verb. It is invariable in all persons. There is no s ending for the third person singular. I must, you must, he, she, it must, etc. Questions are formed by placing must before the subject. No other auxiliary is used. Must I? Must you? Etc. The negative is formed by adding not after must. I must not, you must not, etc. With the contracted form, mustn't, the negative is I mustn't, you mustn't, he mustn't, etc. Note that we do not pronounce the T in mustn't. The correct pronunciation is mustn't. Affirmative short answers are yes, I must, yes, you must, etc. Negative short answers are no, I mustn't, no, you mustn't, etc. Must can only be used in the present tense. It has no past tense and cannot be used with will or other auxiliaries. It has no infinitive or participle forms. To express obligation in any of these cases, other verbs must be used. Must is followed by the infinitive without to. I must leave now. You must come and visit us in Paris. You mustn't be late. Have, followed by an infinitive, is another way to express obligation. In terms of structures, all the rules for the verb have without to that were presented in an earlier lesson apply to have to. Has for the third person singular. Use of the auxiliaries do, does in questions, negatives and short answers. Have to exists in all tenses and therefore is used to express obligation when must cannot be used. How I hate having to get up early in the morning. When I was young, we had to wear school uniforms. I guess we'll have to tell them. Have got, followed by an infinitive, is another way to express obligation. All the rules that were presented earlier for have got without to apply to have got to. Have got to is not normally used in the past and it is without an infinitive and participle forms. We can use the present tense of have got to with future meaning, but will have got to does not exist. I've got to go to bed early tonight because I've got to catch an early train tomorrow. Need exists in two forms, as a modal auxiliary and as a normal verb. Right now, we are not going to look at the modal auxiliary as it is only used in questions and in the negative and is never used in affirmative sentences to express obligation. You need carry an identity card is a mistake. Instead, the verb to need to, which is used like a normal verb with the s ending in the third person singular, and do, does, to form negatives, and interrogatives can be used to indicate that it is necessary to do something. Its meaning is similar to that of have to, have got to, which are used to mean that it is obligatory to do something. Remember that to need is followed by the infinitive. If you go to China, you need to get a visa. How far in advance do I need to apply? In the negative, there is an important difference in meaning between mustn't and don't, doesn't have to, haven't, hasn't got to, don't, doesn't need to. First of all, mustn't is not used to express the speaker's thoughts or wishes. Mustn't indicates that something cannot be done because it is illegal or highly undesirable. It expresses prohibition. In meaning, it is similar to a negative imperative. You mustn't exceed the speed limit. You mustn't eat that, it's spoiled. You mustn't be late. Remember not to use have to, have got to, need to in the negative as synonyms for mustn't. You can instead use cannot, can't. You mustn't park here. You cannot park here. Or you can't park here. You can also use the negative forms of the verbs let, allow, permit. They can be used in all tenses, present, past and future. Used in affirmative sentences, these verbs express permission to do something. The meaning of all three verbs is similar. In terms of level of formality, let is the least formal, allow is more formal, and permit is the most formal. Let is followed by an object and the infinitive without to. My parents let me stay out as late as I like, but Tina's parents don't let her stay out after midnight. Allow and permit can both be followed by an object plus the infinitive. They allow us to smoke at school, but not in class. They permit students to leave early when they have a request from a parent. Allow and permit can also be followed by a gerund. They allow smoking in designated areas. They permit smoking in designated areas. Allow and permit can also be used in passive sentences. Smoking is allowed in the smoking area. Smoking is permitted in the smoking area. Or, people are allowed to smoke. People are permitted to smoke. Let is not used in the passive. Use allow or permit instead. Used in the affirmative, let, allow, permit express permission to do something. Used in the negative, they express lack of permission. In other words, prohibition. They don't let us chew gum in class. Chewing gum is not allowed. Students are not allowed to chew gum. Students are not permitted to leave school early without parental consent. As you will see shortly when we look at how to express obligation and prohibition in the past, these structures are extremely useful. In the affirmative, must, have to, have got to all express the idea of obligation in ways that are roughly similar. Instead, in the negative, have to, have got to are similar in meaning to the negative of need to and need, and indicate choice based on absence of obligation. Meaning, that you can do something if you want to, but that there is no necessity to do so. As you saw earlier in this lesson, the verb to need to can be used to express the idea that it is necessary to do something. You need to have a visa to go to China. In the negative, the meaning is that there is no necessity. You don't need to have a visa to go to the United States. The modal auxiliary verb need is similar in meaning. However, need is only used in questions or in the negative. Need not, or the contracted form needn't. It is more formal than need to and is not used as much. You needn't have a passport to go to the United States. While it is possible to say that you need something or don't need something, using to need followed by an object, needn't must be followed by another verb, not by an object. You don't need a passport to travel in the European Union is correct. You needn't a passport to travel in Europe is a mistake. The negative forms of have to, have got to are similar in meaning to the negative forms of need and to need to. They express the idea that it is possible but not necessary to do something. Don't need, needn't indicate permission not to do something. Don't have to, haven't got to indicate absence of obligation, but they do not indicate prohibition. They all offer a choice. We haven't got to drive so fast. We've got plenty of time. You don't have to eat the soup if you're not hungry. We don't have to get up early on Sundays. We can sleep late if we like. There is a vast difference in meaning between mustn't, used for prohibition, and don't have to, haven't got to, used for absence of obligation. Make sure you understand the difference and remember to use these verbs correctly. Consider the following. You mustn't drive if you don't have a license. You can't drive if you don't have a license. You're not allowed to drive if you don't have a license. You don't have to drive if you feel tired. I'll drive. Remember that must is not used in the past tense and that have got to is rarely used. Therefore, to describe past obligation, we use the past of have to, had to, using did to form questions and negative sentences. What rules were there when you went to school? What did you have to do? Girls had to wear skirts. Boys had to wear ties. Did you have to wear uniforms? We didn't have to wear uniforms, but on Mondays we all had to wear white shirts or blouses for school assembly. As you've surely realised, if must doesn't have a past tense, neither does mustn't. It is not possible to use mustn't to express prohibition in the past, and we cannot use the negatives of have to, have got to, which indicate absence of obligation. We can use could not, couldn't. In Victorian times, women could not vote. We also use the negatives of let, allow, permit. Allow and permit are regular verbs. The irregular past of let is let. Used in the affirmative, these verbs express permission. My parents were very easygoing. They let me study what I wanted to. They allowed me to choose my friends. We were always permitted to invite our friends to visit. Used in the negative in all the ways that were explained previously in this lesson, these verbs express prohibition. What didn't they let you do at school? They didn't let us chew gum. Girls weren't allowed to wear slacks. They didn't allow girls to wear high-heeled shoes, nylon stockings, makeup or earrings. Wearing short skirts wasn't allowed. Boys were not allowed to wear jeans. They didn't let boys wear jackets in the building. Students were not permitted to leave the building during the school day. Should and ought to are auxiliary verbs used to show that it is necessary, advisable or right to do something. Must expresses a stronger sense of obligation than should or ought to. Should, ought to are used for advice, suggestions or instructions and describing duty rather than for regulations or obligation. Should is invariable in all persons, does not require another auxiliary to form the negative and interrogative, and is followed by the infinitive without to. The contracted form of should not is shouldn't. Ought is also a modal auxiliary verb. It is invariable in all persons, forms the negative by adding not directly after the verb, and forms the interrogative by placing the verb before the subject. It is the only modal verb followed by to. You ought to get more sleep. You ought not to go to bed so late. What ought they to do? The contracted form of ought not is oughtn't. Often we use should as a more diplomatic way of saying must when talking about duty or obligation. In this case, it would not be correct to use ought to. Drivers should stop at pedestrian crossings. Campers should make sure that all fires are thoroughly extinguished. Library books should be returned on or before the due date. That is the end of the lesson. Now you can do the exercises on the grammar points presented in this unit.